I was in that space of feeling so much mental stress, and I had no idea how much weight I was carrying until everything became clear.
Wow.
And then I can actually breathe. I can actually live. I can actually do more than just exist. I had no idea how much of a burden I was carrying. And so just the decision to unschool was not just freeing for my children, but very freeing for my family. Like even my husband, who I thought would be the most difficult to convince, the most difficult, very much completely on board. He's taking all these bits and pieces that I'm sharing with him from the resources that I'm finding, and he is processing this and he is applying it.
Fare of the Free Child is a weekly podcast that centers
diverse narratives, insightful commentary,
learning with our children and deschooling ourselves, owning our multiple identities and treating children with dignity,
creating community and sharing conversation from often silenced spaces,
breathing life into liberation practices proactively and on purpose.
It's about parenting. It's about self-directed education, loving. It's about learning, liberatory practices,
defining love for ourselves and giving our love to as much of the world as it can possibly contain.
Let's find each other. Let's support each other. All of these stories are important and should be shared. Hello, it's your girl, Akila. I think it's so funny when people say that it's your girl, it's your boy. Anyway, last episode, I said that I would continue. I brought up 3 things, right? Discipline, bodily autonomy, and other people's feelings, managing other people's feelings around your self-directed education journey. And I said that I would do maybe an in-between episode or something like that to finish up. This isn't it. I was going to have a brief conversation answering 2 specific questions with this week's guest. But y'all, we started talking and so much goodness came up. And I think as you listen to the episode, I think you'll be okay with me not continuing the thought process I had last episode. I'll save that for another time, maybe even next season. Or I'll probably hit you up on Patreon and go into the details there. Because as you know, I'll be engaging with my patrons every week, even though the show is going on hiatus starting sometime after I get back from Arrow, that conference in New York, because I want to tell y'all how that went too. This episode, y'all, is so good. I'm so grateful that Katrina was such a good sport and hopped on. She messaged me and asked me a couple of questions. And I said, look, let's answer these questions on the show. And then it turned out into a really beautiful conversation around making the transition into unschooling. And Katrina, shout out to Leslie. Katrina and I connected through Leslie Bray, which I didn't even realize. And she took my 9-week Raising Free People workshop. So I really got to know more about Katrina's family and her motivation really for freeing her children from what feels very much like an imprisoned space for many of us, which is school, whether it's public or private or charter. Her family made the transition from charter school now into unschooling. And really, they're still in the deschooling phase because it's just been a couple of months. They should have started school yesterday, and which was the 31st of July. But they are officially now in unschooling / deschooling mode. So for those of you who are considering transitioning out of regular school into even homeschooling, if that's the case, but wanting something even more liberatory than that, you're going to really love this episode. And for those of you who are further in the journey, you're going to hear a lot of familiar sentiments. You're going to hear the thought processes that you've gone through, some of the conversations that you've had with your partner or your children, some of the obstacles that come up. But also what I love hearing from Katrina is her commitment to the work. You know, she's in it now. It's already so tough to make the decision to unschool or follow any self-directed path because we are expected and even rewarded for following standard operating procedure and giving your kids over to the system via school. It's hard for a lot of us to find support when we go down a different path. But Katrina is so committed to that, even when she has no idea what it'll look like, and she's already seeing the rewards of that commitment. So that's what our conversation is about, and I encourage you to check out the show notes page. I'm doing it a little bit differently. I try to take notes during the call so you can see what's happening at different points in the conversation if you want to, fast forward to that one point. And I may be doing more of that next season when I have some help. So that's there on the show notes page, which is akilasrichards.com/48 because it's episode 48. And I have to say happy 1-year anniversary to Fair of the Free Child podcast. It was the end of July of last year that I started this thing officially. So it feels really, really good to be continuing here. And I have been so rewarded. Okay. I mean, so very rewarded and blessed by all of you and all of the connections that I'm making in this commitment to raising free people out loud and supporting other people in doing the same. This conversation feels like one of those rewards. Listen in, enjoy, check out the show notes page and connect with Katrina if you want to. Her links are on the show notes page as well. It's My Mommy Flies, all one word. Let's get into it. Easy. I'm just going to sit back and be like, Katrina, let them know. Because I know how you do.
I tend to get a little bit deep.
Which is exactly what we need. So let's start right there then. I have Katrina Morrison on, it's My Mommy Flies on Instagram, right?
Yes.
Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. I could not be happier to be chatting with Katrina and introducing her to y'all today. Welcome, sis.
Thank you so much. I am very, very happy and humbled to be here. I do appreciate the invitation and I'm glad I made it.
Yes. So let me tell y'all how this came about. So I met Katrina in the most wonderful way. We actually met because she took my 9-week Raising Free People workshop. She was one of the women who were in that mix. And I just got to know a little bit about Katrina's family and their journey and where she is now. So she emailed me recently. The workshop ended maybe a couple months ago by now. And she messaged me because she's living the work, doing the work. And she had some questions that I said, oh, Katrina, can we answer these on the podcast? And she was like, let's do it. So I want to start a little bit with the backstory. Katrina, tell us who you guys are and how you got to the space of focusing on self-directed education today.
Basically, we're a family of 5. I have 2 smaller children and an older adult child. And my younger children are in the as of last year, they would be in the 4th grade, in the 3rd grade. And so both my husband and I work in travel. I am a flight attendant. So that's, by profession, I'm gone half the month and going through different parts of the country and occasionally parts of the world. My husband is probably gone, maybe a few times during the quarter. But we're pretty much a very, very busy family. And the kids were both in a very structured public charter school. And that was working for us for some time. But I guess as of recently, I began to see signs that we needed a change. And it's just really interesting how I stumbled upon your work in Fair of the Free Child. I think timing is everything. Because, I scrolled past, I think it was Instagram, and we have a mutual friend, Leslie Bray.
Oh, yes.
And yes, we have, and I think it must have been something that she posted on her Instagram. And it was some kind of conversation, online conversation you were hosting regarding raising free people. And, I was in that space of, I have to do something different, or we have to do something different. And I had no idea what that was. I had been speaking with other moms and kind of sharing the same concerns that something has to change. And it wasn't just regarding our schools. It was a lot of things. It was society. It was looking in the past and just trying to figure out what we did that made sense and what we did that did not make sense. I think it was also around the time of Black History Month where my family and I tend to dive deep, very deep into some of our history. And, it was around that time. And I think there was something going on with the Black Lives Movement at the time, just this past February. And I think just out of frustration, I told my husband, I said, something is really not right. You know, we know that there is something completely wrong with the judicial system that allows certain things to continue to occur in our community. We try to brainstorm and think of ways to fix it or improve it. And then it's just so difficult because you can't deny the fact that all of these systems are tied together.
Right.
So I begin to think to myself, well, gosh, you know, especially like I mentioned with Black History Month. And in my mind, I'm already questioning, you know, why don't we teach this to our children on a day-to-day basis, you know, or why isn't this part of their curriculum, not just about our history in America, but beyond that.
Right.
Because if you look at, you know, the history of our civilization, it went well beyond our history in America.
Of course.
It started from such a long ago place. So, you know, just kind of having all of these, I guess you would say, call it the perfect storm.
Yeah.
Having all of these questions come together, you know, around this time that I'm experiencing some angst in the system that we were in, and just looking at our history as a civilization and our ancient Egyptian ancestors and wondering why my children are not familiar with this. Why wasn't I familiar with this? Why is this an add-on thing? You know, it's questioning our judicial system. I just begin to question everything.
Yes.
And I remember having a conversation with my husband. I'm like, something is wrong. How could we possibly trust this system to raise our children when this is happening? It's evident. It's right in front of us. We cannot deny what is going on.
Yes.
You know, how can we put so much in a system to raise our children?
Exactly.
And so,
and you know what, Katrina, what's so interesting about that is that I speak with so many people, and I imagine you do too, who have those same questions that come up. But the difference is that you didn't stop there. You didn't have the conversation with your husband or other people and get frustrated and say, damn it, I hope when my kids get through this school system, they beast it out and do really well and get their PhDs, and then they change it from within. What is it that made you not stop there?
That's the interesting part. And that's the part that at the time I didn't see it as a blessing, but now I clearly see that as a blessing. It was becoming increasingly uncomfortable in the school community that we were in. And I think that I had gotten through a lot of it because that's just what we do. We survive things and we move on and we just continue going with it.
Yeah.
But it just began to be so many things, one after another, that was occurring in the school that, you know, I just felt so out of touch with what was going on, and I was very uncomfortable. And I began to doubt myself and question, maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe I have too much time on my hands, because I was one of those parents that anytime I had an off day, I was at the school. I was doing whatever I can to be involved. So, you know, I started to question, well, maybe I'm just too much in it. Maybe I need to step back and place, you know, seriously, this is what we do, right?
I totally get it. That's why I laugh, because it's so familiar.
We make up excuses and we blame ourselves for not fitting the mold.
And we blame our children also.
Yes. And I was really at that place where I blamed myself for not fitting into this mold.
Yes.
And not just going with the program. And it was a very clear day to me, and I never forget this day. And that's why I said this whole experience to me, looking back, it was an amazing blessing. But while I was in it, it was a very, it didn't feel like it at all. It was just one thing after another. And it was like, oh my gosh, I'm really trying to make this work. You know how you say, okay, let's just make this work. This is what you need to do. And then you put things in motion and you shift and you adjust, but then something else comes and you're like, wait.
Right. Wherever you go, there you are.
Wherever you go, and to me, that discomfort, that long-term discomfort, that uneasiness, that feeling that you don't belong, that feeling that you need to change. Mm-hmm. And as scared as I was to change, I was so scared because this has been our norm. That had been our norm for so long. Yes. And I already envisioned so much on this path. Yep. So to just completely erase, you know, what I created in my mind as our path to success for our children and our family, to completely start new was scary, was extremely scary. And I almost just froze. I almost froze, but I got one very swift kick in the butt. And like I said, it was a very clear day. And I had discovered something that my daughter had written to herself a year before, because she likes to journal. So at the time, she was probably 9. Yeah. She was 9 at the time. So I discovered something that she had written, and it was just by chance. I'm literally just going through the house, sweeping, picking some things up. And I see this composition notebook, and, you know, we have lots of them floating around. Yeah. So the first thing I do is just flip through it just to figure out which room do I place it in? Who does it belong to? Is this old or is this new? So I flip through and I immediately fall on a page with her handwriting. And she's writing a note to herself about how she feels like a failure because she did not complete her work for the week. And she felt that she would be punished. And this is hard, very difficult for me to say, but I will say it. She felt that she would go to jail because she would not be successful in the way that was determined for her. And that hurt so bad. And I think I just froze right where I was and just kind of broke down, you know, completely broke down.
Yes, I
completely broke down because again, this was a moment where I was doubting myself.
Yeah. So and that on top of that.
Yes. I had went through everything that I went through and I felt like I survived, and maybe it's just me. Maybe I need to change my thinking. Maybe it's my perspective. You know, maybe I'm not fitting in. Whatever it was, I just started to blame myself and felt maybe I was too sensitive. But to read my child's handwriting and to know that this is how she felt at this time, one moment in time, and so long ago that I missed it, that I was too busy focused on my feelings and how I fit in my role in this community, that I didn't even think to ask her. And she might have told me in more than one way or another.
Yeah.
But it was at that very moment that I discovered it. And to me, that was the nails in the coffin. I couldn't go back after that. I knew that we had to make a change. So it wasn't long after that. I shared that with my very close family. I shared it with my very close friends because I needed support.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long after that we decided, we didn't decide to homeschool at that time, but we decided to not return to that situation.
And I remember that because you actually messaged me with sort of like an overview version of that when we're taught. Yes. And I was like, man, am I familiar with that feeling of like, I'm not fitting into this system. I can't get it right. And then for me, it went from that to, so if I feel like this in the periphery, how does my child feel deep in it, you know, going through the same things? And it's just what you said, like, you're like, why can't I fit into this space? Why is it that I have so many how come nobody else sees this shit? Like, am I tripping? You know, like,
am I too woke? What's
going on? Right.
I'm serious. Yes. All of that. I was like, maybe if I just, you know, pretend not to see it, maybe it's all of that. It's all of that. But when the universe wants you to be in a place somewhere other than you are in, everything works against whatever you think is supposed to happen. Because everything that could possibly happen happened to move us, from there. Everything. Like I could not, at that point, I could not deny it. There was nothing. I could not make excuses for it. I could not justify it. It was time for a change. And so, like I said, we made the decision. We had no idea what we were going to do, but we knew what we were not going to do.
That's right. And sometimes that's a very powerful starting point.
Oh, yes, it is. It is a powerful starting point, but also very scary.
Oh, yes. Been there many times over. Listen, story of my life, Katrina, okay? I was just talking to my best friend about that last night, how it's like, you know what not to do, but the road ahead is like murky. You're like, but I would love to know what my 4-step strategy is for going forward.
Oh, yeah. That's me. Yep. Oh, that's me all the way. I need a plan. I need the mini goals underneath the plan. I have to see it from the beginning to end. But I guess that's the magic of just believing that the universe will handle itself. Yeah. It's just going with it. And that's what happened. And I can describe it as standing at a clearing in the middle of a forest. And it's just this opening, and you're standing in this opening, and all around you, you're just encircled by forest, deep, dark forest, and you don't know. And I was there for about a few weeks. And it was very uncomfortable. I didn't want to talk about it with everyone. I couldn't talk about it too much.
Right.
Because I'm one of those persons when I have conversations about what's going in my life, I usually have a couple of options, right? Yeah. If I want to discuss it, let's discuss these options. Tell me what you think. And I didn't have those options yet. Yep. I didn't know. And, I did begin to slowly reach out to people and not necessarily tell them what was going on, but just to kind of get their feel for homeschool or other school options. Mm-hmm. And what I did was we decided to apply to a few private schools. Mm-hmm. And we decided to also consider homeschool. So we had 3 options to work out. So at the same time that we were applying for these private schools, I would go ahead and do the extensive research into homeschooling. Yeah. And somewhere in between that month of February, when we have Black History Month, and I told you that conversation I had with my husband, up until the time that I decided to research homeschool, I had found Fear of the Free Child. And so, and the idea just was so, to me, was very liberating to just think about and consider. Yeah. And it was just almost like a fantasy, I guess, to say. Like, I have never heard of this. Like, what are you talking about? Free children? Right. What is this? Are they just running around crazy? Yep. Like, to me, the idea made me a little bit apprehensive, like nervous, like, wait, I don't know if I can do this. So I just kind of, just looked a little bit into it, just peeked into it. Yeah. And I remember sharing your Instagram with a few other moms that were, talking about homeschool and trying to get their thoughts on it, but didn't really hear anything back. But, so then I remember, we do have a few homeschool families that I consider friends. Like I mentioned, Leslie Bray.
Yes, shout out to Leslie Bray. Yes, I love her so hard.
Yes. And then I have another friend. Her name is Sandra, and she's out in Florida. Mm-hmm. And she used to live in Atlanta, and my daughter and her daughter would play together quite often. And she was always a homeschool family. And I reached out to her, and to me, when I called her, I was just like, well, I'm thinking about it, but I don't see how, Yeah. And I'm so glad I called her, because she's like, it doesn't have to be that complicated. You could And I think she's always been an unschooler, my friend Sandra. I just never recall hearing her say those words.
Because most times we don't, because people, don't know what it is, or their experience with it, not really experience, their exposure to it is usually negative, because, the media has the same idea you said about kids running around crazy. Like Lord of the Flies.
Yes. But, I always admired the work that she did within her family. And I see the progress. And when I say that, I don't mean in terms of measurable progress, but just the development of her daughter. To me, I was amazed. Yes. And, so I reached out to her, and, she said, hey, it doesn't have to be that complicated. And it was a very brief phone call. but she dropped something in me that said, I can do it. Maybe I can do it.
Yes.
And again, started to dive a little bit deeper into homeschooling. But what really repulsed me, what I did not want to do, was to get caught up in curriculums.
Right.
And get caught up with standards and testing.
Yes, because it would just be another version of the exact same thing, right?
Yeah. Right. So I didn't quite understand that unschooling was a real option for me.
Yeah.
I was still kind of stuck with, it sounds good, but I don't want to, that whole idea of textbooks and creating these plans, and that just overwhelmed me and just put me back in that fearful place that I was in.
Yes.
While we were doing traditional schooling.
Absolutely. Because then now everything is on you, right? Like that's the thing that comes up for everybody.
Yes,
like, I don't want to be the teacher. Me. Yes.
Exactly. Everything is on me. And what I'm trying to do is I'm really trying to get my kids to love learning, get back to loving what they do and really exploring. And I just did not want to put restrictions or expectations on how that would happen.
Yep.
So the idea of traditional homeschooling, I guess, that scared me. I didn't want any parts of it. So then I started to go a little bit deeper into fear of the free child, and you started to talk about unschooling. And then guess what else happened?
What?
Your workshop posted.
Yes.
You posted, the timing here is amazing. So when I'm here, like, I don't do that, and I'm like, I saw something, Leslie shared it. I don't know how, but I saw your workshop, the 9-week workshop on unschooling. And I was just like, oh, wow. Like this couldn't be better planned out than I could imagine.
If I tried,
this was perfect. If I tried, this was perfect. So I think the same day that I saw it, I registered.
That is just so funny. I have goosebumps, Katrina.
Yes, the same, because I was asking, I needed help, and I was asking the universe, help me make this make sense.
Yes.
It does not make sense to me. And what's even more, I just have to add, what's even more miraculous about this whole timing thing is I was able to have lunch with Leslie and we talked about unschooling, and I was asking her, what does that look like for her family?
Yeah.
And she shared with me, and I left knowing that that's what I was going to do, right? I left with that understanding that's what I was going to do, but I did not know how, because I work. Right?
Yep.
So I'm like, not only do I work like a real job, I'm like gone.
Yes.
Like literally bags packed. I'll see you in 2 days.
Yep.
Like, how could I do this?
Yep.
Right? I have lunch with her on a Friday afternoon or early afternoon.
Yeah.
I go home and I pack my bags because I have a trip. I'm flying out that late afternoon, literally hours after we have lunch, right? So I'm going with this question, how can I do this? I'm gone when I work.
Right.
How can I do this? So I work my trip. It's a 3-day trip, and I have my coworkers and we engage in casual conversation. And there is one coworker, one crew member who the next day we sit together on our jump seat, and I confess to her, because again, this is still very close to me.
Yes.
We have something in flight attendants world. We have something called jump seat confessions, right? Yeah. When you're just in that moment and you just have to tell someone what's ailing you, and you don't know much about them other than their name and that you share your profession.
Yeah.
But it's just, you have to say something. So I said to her, so I'll be homeschooling my children next year. And she says, oh, wow, I'm homeschooling mine. And I almost jumped off the plane. That's how wowed I was.
Yes.
Because I'm telling her to just, because I'm expecting how you going to do that?
Right. The typical answers. You ain't no teacher.
I'm expecting
right.
all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm expecting, what made you decide that? How are you going to do that? So can I just say, for the next 2 days that she and I are on this trip, we are chatting it up. We are sharing resources.
Yes.
She is giving me all this information on how she works her schedule so that she can be home. And I'm starting to draft my ideas on how I can work my schedule and make it work. By the time that weekend was over, I had a plan. And to me, and then I believe your workshop started very shortly after.
See?
And to me, just from standing from the beginning of standing in the middle of that forest.
Yes.
And not having a clue as to what we were going to do, to the path just opening up for me was amazing. And what to me put the icing on the cake was that we actually got accepted into one of our school choices.
I remember that.
Yes. And remember, we were trying to decide, but again, we chose homeschool, but what was empowering was that we had a choice.
Yes. And because you stood firm in there is just so much work in what you said, Katrina. Like I feel like there are levels of things to unpack here that we need like a series just around this transition, because so much of this stuff, we didn't even get to your children yet, right?
Yes.
Like, of course, your daughter writing that, journaling that to herself was a major, major part of it. But we're just talking about your fears, you having to pivot. We didn't even talk about the aspect of like you and your husband. These are all, and then also the logistics, right? The strategy around if I'm not at home, because we have single parents also, or two people who work outside of the home every day. So there's so much power in everything that you said, because you were like, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I know what's not working out. And you were willing to follow that path, even though you didn't know what it was going to look like. And this is what came up. So I want this to be something that we all take away from this, that you don't have to have the answers. But if you're asking the questions to yourself, to universe, also to other people, because you were very resourceful, you will find a route to make a plan. And you have to be flexible with that plan too. We're not used to that. But I feel like all of that came up in what you said, Katrina.
Yes, all of that became very evident to me. And I was just in a moment I was very thankful for every moment and grateful for every piece of the puzzle that was connecting for me, because I really did not know. And you know how sometimes people can experience physical ailments from mental stress.
Yes.
And because they don't even know that they're under so much mental stress. I was in that space of feeling so much mental stress, and I had no idea how much weight I was carrying until everything became clear.
Wow.
And then I can actually breathe. I can actually live. I can actually do more than just exist. I had no idea how much of a burden I was carrying. And so just the decision to unschool was not just freeing for my children, but very freeing for my family. Like even my husband, who I thought would be the most difficult to convince, the most difficult, he, very much completely on board. He's taking all these bits and pieces that I'm sharing with him from the resources that I'm finding, and he is processing this and he is applying it. Case in point, and if he's listening, hi, babe. But, yesterday, most of the children went back to school. Our kids were home. I had to work a day trip, and usually we have a couple of resources for sitters, but we didn't have an option. And I was expecting my husband to, hey, I can't do it, or I've got meetings, because he works from home as well, but he's not home working. He's actually out in the field. I came home. He said, I got it. I came home yesterday about 6:00 from my trip, actually 5:00 from my trip.
Yeah.
And I expected my kids to be locked in a room somewhere and he's in the office somewhere doing his work, so no, very low expectations, but, but still, cause I know he's got work to do,
yes.
But I come home and my kids are, hey mom, and they're screaming like, hey, so what you guys do today? And they're like, oh, we went to the pool, we went to the gym, and then we were with daddy when he went to his meetings. And I'm just like,
look
really?
At that. They got right in a groove. I'm
like, really? You went to dad's office? And they were like, yeah. I'm like, he took y'all swimming? He's like, yeah. And I'm just like, wow, look at that.
Yes.
Give my husband some props.
I was like,
look at that.
What's your husband's first name? What's his name?
His Neil, Neil.
Neil. Shout out to Neil for getting right in the groove. Yes. I love that Neil jumped in and was like, okay, what does it look like? This is what it looks like. And another day, they may be in the room on their screens, which we'll talk about in a little bit, gaming the whole live long day. And also that's okay too, because it's all a part of the process of learning how to not need to control, right? Because this idea of controlling the outcome of their lives is really just fear-based, because we can't actually control it. We can influence it, but they also need to be the influencers. So Katrina, I feel like this is a good segue, if you're cool with it, into some of the questions that you had, that prompted us to be in this space. Can we go there?
Yes, that would be great. We've been deschooling now, I guess you would say, for about a month. And we plan to deschool for a minimum of 5 months, which will be the equivalent of the 5 years that both children were in school, traditional school. Mm-hmm. And so that will lead us through, I believe it's November. Mm-hmm. And then around, we probably won't do much for December, but by January, we hope to figure some things out or allow them to have figured some things out.
Yeah.
So my children are showing some great, again, I want to say progress, but I don't mean it in a measurable way,
right.
But I would say in terms of development or outcomes to deschooling.
Yeah.
And, I was very, again, very nervous about the deschooling process and, because we were so used to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Even during the summer, we were so used to a lot of things. And most people will say, well, how could you deschool during the summer? Well, it's easy if your children always had summer packets every summer.
Exactly.
Which they did. They had very thick summer packets through the summer or any school break that we went to. And it was always something we had to fit in to our schedule and our plan.
To combat summer learning loss or these ideas.
So originally I wasn't going to start the clock on deschooling until maybe about, August, now when they would be officially, returning back to school. Yes. But then I realized, I started to see us deschooling during this past 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, so we're in it right now. This is what it is. And it's a good thing because, the summertime, you're kind of already laid back. Your schedules are already off. Like I said, my husband and I, we don't have traditional office jobs, so we don't have set schedules. So I knew it was happening.
And let me stop you right there and tell you, you know what, Katrina, you've actually been deschooling since February. You really have. Yeah, because that's what it, like, seriously, because that's what the process is. The major part of deschooling is to question things, to say, wait a minute, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't, my children aren't responding in this way, or why don't they know these things? Why is this an afterthought? Why is this an add-on? Whatever. That is deschooling. It is the questioning of these things, and then a realization that it isn't just about the question. You can also seek to find something that works for you and yours. So you've really been deschooling since February. And
great. Yeah. I'm glad to think of that. Yes.
It's true. And I want to touch too, because you said, I know you're probably going by the general idea that typically for each year that a child is in school, you want to take about a month to deschool.
Yes.
Yes. And I hear a lot of people say that, and it can feel too like a very good starting point because again, because we're shifting out of a very structured space, and that is in a sense a structured thing. It gives you that sense of comfort, but really it's going to vary vastly depending on the needs of each child. So one of the things that came up when you messaged me most recently, Katrina, as you said, also, my children have expressed interest in some activities and want to take lessons or classes, but I thought with deschooling, we'd be taking a break from formal instruction in classes. And I'm so glad you brought that up because, because I never even thought of that, but I'm like, yeah, actually, I could totally see how that might come up as, wait a minute, aren't we supposed to be like completely in chill mode?
Yes, because, and I confess, I don't want to go back to that, right. I'm not ready to go back to that drop off and I got to wait an hour for them to be done.
Yes.
I was looking forward to not doing much of anything. And I even told my husband, I put him on warning, hey, make sure you don't schedule anything
right.
during these 5 months.
Yep.
So then, like I said, my daughter, she's been asking about gymnastics and, asking about these things. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll see. And, but again, in my mind, I'm like, I don't know if we should be doing that. Shouldn't we be kind of just chilling out at home and maybe doing some other stuff in the community, but not really subscribing or committing to schedules and fixed things. And so,
I'm glad you brought it up. So what you want to do is define what the unschooling culture looks like for your family. The four of you then are needing to get together and just talk about it. So you say exactly what you just said to me, to your children and to your partner. I'm looking forward to just straight up chillaxing, cold-maxing and relaxing for this amount of time. What about you guys? What do you think it looks like? So then your daughter might say, yeah, me too, but I also want to take gymnastics. And your son might say, gamer life, I want to play my video games, or maybe I'm interested in starting this thing here. And then you come up with it together. So if gymnastics is like the one thing that she wants to do now, and it's better than taking her to gymnastics and then karate and then this and that and then working on her packets and making sure she's getting it right, then you are deschooling, because the whole point is for them to be immersed, for y'all actually, but primarily them as the ones who are being forced to go to school, for them to be immersed in the things that they want to do and that it makes sense for everybody in the family. So it would be totally okay if it fit into your schedule and you could do it, that she go to gymnastics, even though it's a formal class structure, because she's choosing it herself. She's choosing it. Now, if it doesn't make sense for your schedule and your needs, talk to her about it. Can you do gymnastics videos online once a week for the first month and then we transition? Can we take one gymnastics class and see these 3 basic things and then you practice them 2 times a week for a month? Whatever you want to do, quite literally, whatever it is that you have the capacity and the means to do, this is what you should be doing with this time. So it's totally okay to do classes if they are choosing it. And if at any point she wants to stop and is like, I don't want to go today, then that should be okay too.
Yep. Yeah. And I figured you would say that. I knew that was the best choice. And I figured you would say that because it was mostly me that was like, do we really have to do that?
Right. Now I'm going to have to drop you off.
I totally get it.
But I want to make clear that in that, Katrina, is that space of, so this is the other part that we don't really have a lot of practice in. The same way, if you and I were hanging out and we said, okay, we're going to spend a week together, and I'm saying, I want to do this, and that. And you're like, oh, but I thought we were just going to chill by the pool. You and I would have that conversation. Do the same thing with her. Just have the conversation. Yeah. I don't want to drop you off 3 times a week, dog. Can you do one? Can you do one time a week?
Right. Right. We are very fortunate to live in a community that has a gymnastics program exclusively for homeschoolers during the weekday.
Awesome.
And wasn't that amazing? I made a phone call, based on her interest, but, still not ready to commit. And, they told us, hey, we have a monthly program, which is even better for me because we have some travel coming up and I didn't want to be committed to sessions that we couldn't complete.
Yeah.
So they have a month program where every month for 4 weeks. And it fits right into our schedule. It's the middle of the day. Yeah, that did work out. So yeah, we're definitely on board with that. And I had a feeling that is, the choice that I should have made or would be making.
And that's what it sounds
was
like
a little bit resistant.
And that's totally fine, because that honesty is such an important part of it, Katrina, being able to say, because we're also not used to that, particularly mothers, saying no about something that's an enrichment activity. She could go on to the Olympics, all of these things come up. So we're not allowed to say, but I don't want to. We're not allowed to say that. So then some of us, and I'm not saying you, but I'm saying some of us even build up resentment towards like our children and activities. These are real feelings because we are real people. We don't magically like disappear our emotional spectrum because we have children. We still are like, but I don't want to do that. So I think it's so wonderful that you're being really, really candid about what your needs are too. And you're going to need to keep on doing that throughout that process. Also in that message you sent, we're also talking about your son and his needs. The fact that he's on his computer or some sort of device, it feels like all day long. So your statement was, if I allow this to go on, how might he get a fertile space where he's able to create and explore the world around him, especially when most times that I ask him to step away, it becomes a problem.
Right.
My answer for that is always context, the C word in our household, context, context. Because you're looking at the computer and you're looking at, or any device, a phone, a gaming console, and you're saying, I don't equate that with learning. I don't equate that with learning. The society that I was raised in doesn't equate that with learning. So that's a judgment on what he's choosing to do with his time from a loving space, from a productive space. But the reality is that a computer or even a phone is a learning tool. In that situation, look at it, and I find it helpful to look at it as a judgment. Like when I do, it's like, okay, I'm judging what he's doing with his time. Meanwhile, I have no proof at all that this is something that's not going to be productive. I have a fear, right? And then I'm also focused on productivity, but I have no idea because many of us, myself included, my job, how I earn a living, how I grow into the work that I do and love is by sitting in front of a computer all day. For others, it's gaming all day. It's more so to shift the focus over time, slowly but surely, Katrina, to what is he doing? How, I want to learn a little bit more. Not why is he doing that, but what is he doing? I want to learn a little bit more. Oh, he's super into Minecraft or he's super into whatever this thing is. I'm going to take a look at that. I'm going to see, to quell my own anxiety, how other people have used this thing, and not to educate him on how he can turn it into a career pursuit, but only just to manage your own anxiety around it. Because these are learning tools. A phone is like an encyclopedia back in the day, even if you're gaming on it. And they also connect with other people and they're learning and growing. This is like networking in a sense for them at times, and using different motor skills and using different critical thinking skills. We're just not aware of how those things show up because we're not used to it, but they are happening even when they're staring at a screen.
Yes, I would agree with you 100% and say that I am almost there. I am there. We are a lot more. We've come a long way to no screen time at all on the weekdays. That's just part of his daily thing. So we're completely on board with allowing him to, use the computer for safe gaming sites and things like that.
Yes.
Where I'm having an issue is when I need him to get off, whether it's, hey, dinner's been sitting on the table and it's now cold, or hey, you forgot to do something. You need to clean up behind yourself, go back. His response to me is just like, he's just so frustrated and so like upset. Or if he's been on it for 2 hours and we want family time, or hey, come out and play this game with us, or come, we're about to all go in the backyard, or hey, go ahead and get dressed. We're heading out.
Yeah.
He gets very disgruntled.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm mostly looking at it from
that part.
If this is good for him, why is it that he's having such a visceral, such a angry response? Like, you know what I mean? I'm not wanting to control it. I'm just wanting to, what I would like, and this is the control part. Mm-hmm. What I would like is for him to, and I do this with him. I'll say, hey, in the next 10 minutes, you need to come to a natural pause and come and eat dinner. Like, I'll give him some lead time. So he's not like, hey, I'm in the middle of a game,
right. And that's great,
so he's not getting
his time.
Yes, I am doing that, but I'm really concerned about if it would have an effect on personal interaction and just social concerns,
Just keep watching it. Try not to go too deep into the narrative of what may or may not happen, because that's all conjecture. And keep on doing exactly what you're doing. You're giving him lead time. So if you typically give him 10 minutes, see if there are times where you can give an hour and say, hey, okay, you see the time now. In about 30 minutes, we're going to do, or set the alarm on his phone for 30 minutes. And so sometimes we have to go there. Same thing like with our partners, where sometimes we'll say, all right, I want to do this thing. And then we have to work up to this point where we're saying, yes, this is mutually agreeable, or no, this isn't, but what can we do? Because here are my needs. It's a partnership model. So it is going to take some time. And those concerns that you have, I think, are natural and valid and maybe even healthy, because they allow us to say, okay, what can I do in this environment? Me, not to change him, but what can I do in this environment to manage my concerns around these things? I love him. I care about him. I'm observing things that may not feel so good to my intuitive self. So what can I do about it? So I love that you're giving him the lead time. That's an easy one to do, to continue to do that. And then also test it out. See if like a friend comes over and says, okay, let's go to the pool or let's do this. Is he responding the same way? Is this more so just my parents are making me do something or not doing something? Because that's what they're used to. Because we're just now getting this level of woke, right? So, so they're used to us controlling and saying, essentially do it because I said so, even if we don't use those words. So it's going to take some time, Katrina, for him to trust that this is happening not because she's trying to make me do or not do something, but because this is a part of something greater. That's going to take time for him. He's going to need to now understand that you're no longer coming from a place of coercion and force. You are trying to partner. It'll take time.
Yes, I do understand your point. That's a very valid point. And I had a feeling it would be a little bit more time for him versus my daughter. And not because of, anything we are or are not doing or the way that they are. It's just, I just had a feeling it would be that way.
Yes.
He's definitely very tech savvy and enjoys his computer time. And we do want to be able to honor that and respect that. And we've signed up for, there's a couple of workshops for things that he loves and Minecraft. So he's looking forward to those few workshops. But, the other part of it is, I want to be able to, I guess you would say, experience some of these things with him to make sure he maintains a safe space while at his young age. But it's just, I don't want to say a lot, but it's a little bit overwhelming.
Of course.
Because, it's, my daughter, she was on, Roblox, and, I saw her username. She actually used her real name. And I just had a moment of, wait a minute. No, you're not supposed to use your real name. And, and I think another time she used her photo. I'm like, no, you're not supposed to. So, I know that I have to kind of be in there with them, enjoying it, or setting up my profile with them. And hey, what are we going to do today? What are we going to play today? Or are we on Roblox? Because I don't want to be so confused about it, or not confused, but unfamiliar with it. I want to be able to enjoy those things with them at this young age. So, I guess that's the part of me that I don't want them to grow smarter than me too fast.
Well, good luck with that, because I'm smiling, like I'm giving you my polite smile, though you can't see it. And I'm just going to say, keep on going, honey, because you will absolutely be outdone by them in like 7.2 seconds. Okay. Because we all start, so many of us start out there, especially when we are familiar with unschooling in particular. not homeschooling, we do the same thing. I was on it with the girls. I had my profiles. I was like, yes, I'm in. And then I was confused, like, wait, what? How many layers is this? And then also, I just stopped being interested, you know, because I have my own thing. So do what you got to do, but I'm smiling politely because 2 months from now, you are going to be like, girl, I just want to make sure that they're safe. And I check in every once in a while to make sure that they're safe. And exactly what you said, to educate them on certain protocols, like don't use your real name here. Don't use your photograph. You know, these are life skills. So it becomes more about that and less about, I want to be in it too. Honey, we're not even built like that. Like they're on some next level stuff.
I know. I already know.
You already know.
You're absolutely right. So,
but go through
you're
your
absolutely
process.
right.
This is your process and you're fully entitled to that process, Katrina. So if right now your gut is saying, sign up for all the things with them, follow it, do it. And then eventually you may decide, you know, and that was my experience. You may say, actually, I'm even more tech savvy than I realized and go down this path. And next thing you know, y'all created an app together. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she was on my show. I don't know how it's going to end up, but go down your path. Let yourself have those experiences, sis, because that's how you start to build up those muscles of going from the space of concern to going to a space of confidence, because that thing in the middle, there's concern and there's confidence, and what's in the middle is control. And so that control gauge starts to go more towards the confidence side as you go deeper into the work and as you and your children and your partner create this rhythm together of what makes sense. And they start to see some of the things that, oh, mom is not okay with this, even though I feel like it's fine. And then they will adjust. So you continue to have the dialogue around it. But this is your process. So there's technically nothing you are doing wrong. This is your process. This is the point where you do all of this checking out and shifting and, you know, signing up for all the things. Do it. You're doing exactly what this stage in the journey calls for.
Yes. Very good point.
Yes. Awesome. Well, Katrina, I feel like this is going to be one of the episodes that is the most downloaded because you talked about so many of the shift issues, the issues with the transition. And I'm going to officially go public on record and say, I need you back on because I want to talk more about, I need you to come back on so we can talk more about the transition if you're comfortable, because I love how you tie in so many aspects of it that isn't just about them and learning, but about us managing ourselves in the process.
So I will be more than happy to come back again. I think that, you know, with everything that we have experienced, this whole transition to being a unschooled family, it's definitely worthy of sharing. And I think families such as your family and Leslie Bray's family and all the other families out there that are homeschooling and unschooling and sharing it, you guys really are my heroes, because we would not have arrived at this place of feeling free and happy and actually excited about what will come and not even knowing, like we have no idea what the future will hold for us, but we're excited about it. You know, just letting go and just experiencing life is very invigorating.
Absolutely.
So I do appreciate you all for sharing all of that and for, you know, just being open and honest with me.
You're very welcome. You're very, very welcome. And I'm so grateful for you too. As I said, I love your hosties. I love that you connected to so many things that really have to do with personal leadership. Also, y'all, she's over at mymommyflies.com. The show notes page will have the link, akilasrichards.com/48. So you're going to have the links to her website, her Facebook, her Instagram, so you can connect with Katrina there. Tell her what parts resonated with you, and you can see also how they do it in that sense too. So it's wonderful to hear about your process, and I love your candor in the space as well. So much love to you and your family, Katrina.
And you as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Farrah the Free Child podcast. Like the show? Then show your love or give your feedback at akilasrichards.com.
I love to dance, watch me tap my toes. I love to smile, smile, smile. I love to laugh. 'cause ain't nobody gonna stop me, not me. I'm gonna let my soul fly free, fly free. Can't nobody stop me now. I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna get out, 'cause I am so brave. I am so brave.